Good afternoon and welcome to 25 Minutes with Cap, where each month we discuss recent trends in the specialty insurance space. Today I'm excited to say that I've got Larry Goanos with us. Larry's written a bunch of books. He's a longtime industry veteran, Marsh, AIG underwriting executive, currently runs his own consulting business as an expert witness. Larry, thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Adam. Thank you for asking to be here. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully we'll have a entertaining and information-packed 25 or so minutes.
Sure. So, hey, just a reminder, the content of this webinar is the property of CapSpecialty and it's for informational purposes only. You're not permitted to republish, share, or quote from this webinar without the prior written consent of CapSpecialty, which can be obtained by contacting marketing@capspecialty.com. We hope you enjoy it. So, Larry, how'd you get into business?
Like almost everybody else, Adam, I think you're one of the exceptions, but as I wrote my first and third book, right, no happenstance. You're an exception because you knew what you're getting into. Most people, I answered an ad, my cousin knew a guy, my uncle heard, So me in particular, I was working in New York City. I graduated law school and I was working as a legal editor. And I said, I want to get into practicing law. I answered a blind ad in the New York Law Journal in 1988. Didn't know what the law firm was, just said, come down for an interview. I did. It turned out to be DeMano Lynch. They were big in D&O insurance for AIG. And if I didn't answer that ad, I probably wouldn't be here, but that's what got me in initially. I'll tell you something quickly here, and I don't want to hijack, but there's a couple of interesting stories how people got in. One guy, Jim Donovan, a friend of mine, he was applying for a job at AIG in the D&O department. The receptionist called the D&O guy just prior, was out to lunch, but an E&O guy, Tom Monahan, answers, "Oh, we need someone too, send him to me." So if Tom Monahan didn't pick up that phone, Jim would not have spent the last 35 years in E&O insurance, right?
You had like 10 stories in your books around people getting a job because, hey, there was kind of this other job that was available with some other person. And what was your other one?
So another great one, this woman was in college and her college allowed her to put, each senior got 5 pieces of green paper to print their resume on. And when you put it in a box in the Career Center on a green paper, the company would know that they were one of your top 5 choices. So it was a very serious thing. And the boxes were locked. So once you put it in, you couldn't get it out. So this woman said, I really wanted to work for General Electric. And I went in the Career Center, I put my green resume in the General Electric box. And she goes, and then I looked and I saw it said, General Reinsurance, not General Electric. And she goes, and I've been a Gen Re for 17 years since.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So you were always into writing. You wrote for the, was it sports editor at Villanova?
Yes. And, very good memory, yes.
Yeah. So, but then you go and write a book, or you've written books. I mean, what kind of put you over the edge from, this would be fun if I wrote a book, to actually like going and finding publishers and doing all that?
That's a great question, Adam. So I always had the writing interest, but I entered the insurance field. And one thing I love about professional lines, I think it comes through in the books, there's a lot of camaraderie, right? And even among competitors, we go to plus parties. I don't know for sure. I've never been an investment banker, but in my mind, the Goldman Sachs people don't love the Morgan Stanley people, or
Right.
But here we don't have that. And I'll give you a quick example. Tony Jocko at Excel, who's a great guy, about 30 years ago, we were at an ABA conference. I think it was in Florida, early days of cell phones, and I forgot my charger. So I was at AIG, he was at Excel, and I mentioned to him, he said, Larry, I brought an extra one, you can use mine. And I remember thinking that made a big impression on me. A direct competitor, we go after each other all the time on accounts, and he's loaning me his cell phone charger, but that's indicative of our industry. So the thing that really triggered me, my first book was Claims Made and Reported, which is sort of a history of professional lines. Was a friend of mine, Joe Fine, who was a great guy, just got promoted at age 34 to be president of a division at AIG, the M&A division, in January of 2000. And on the very day he got promoted and they issued the announcement via, in those days, memo to everybody, he got in a car accident on the way home and died tragically. And I remember thinking to myself, Joe's a great guy. He accomplished a lot in his 34 years, but in the future, a lot of people won't remember him. There's no memorializing him. And that planted the seed in my mind that I want to at some point write a book that will get these memories down on paper of people and companies and things. And I'll tell you, I learned a bunch of lessons, and I won't go through all of them right now, but one of the important ones was um, there's an old saying, you have to schedule greatness. So in 2000 or so, I decided to, or actually like 2003, I said, I'm going to write this book about
Yeah.
all these people, Joe and others who passed away or retired.
Yeah.
And I said, whenever I get some free time. So for the first year and a half, I got 20 pages written because most people, when's your free time? Oh, I don't have any free time. Everything's filling up. So the saying you have to schedule greatness is if you want to do something, you have to make it in your calendar and say, I'm going to do it. So then I started a job in Westchester County. I lived in Manhattan. I had a 1 hour train ride. I said every day on the train ride up and back, I'm working on a laptop to write the book. I went from 20 pages for the first year and a half to 360 in the second year and a half. And it really taught me whatever you want to do. You want to paint a portrait, build a house, whatever. You have to schedule and plan on it and not just say when I get free time. So
how hard is it to edit a book?
That was interesting too. You should always get an editor, not do it yourself. Because I know some people with big egos like myself, oh, I could just do it myself. Not good. So there's another saying, another lesson I learned. It's a Zen saying, jump and the net will appear. So I had this book done, and I had just read a book about Hank Greenberg and AIG. It was written by John. It was published by John Wiley and Son, Hoboken. So I needed an editor for my book. The next day, I'm in a golf outing, sit in a car with a reinsurance guy I never met. We're talking, and I said, I just finished writing this book. I'm looking for an editor. I just read this book about Hank Greenberg, AIG. And the guy says, his name's Tom Smith. He says, Larry, my wife did the publicity for that book. And I said, you kidding me? He goes, yeah, and I can get you in touch with the editor. Lo and behold, that woman edited my book as well, just because it happened to come together. I mean, jump and the net will appear. Amazing. That's I believe in that.
How many people did you talk to for that book? Or for
over 400. Yeah, I interviewed over 400, and only one, believe it or not, only one person, Adam, and I won't say his name, but he was retired, and he's like, I'm done with the industry. I'm not talking to. But the vast majority of people, and 100% of the proceeds go to charity. So when I would call a CEO or someone like your dad, who's very revered in the industry, and I'd say, the book proceeds are all going to charity. It's not for me. But, even without saying that, there were so many people who were like, you're going to write a history of our industry. Great. I want to tell you about my mentor. I'm happy to talk to you because I want him in the book, blah, blah, blah. And so it really showed me the camaraderie that our industry has.
You talk a lot about, so you've spent just about all your time in professional liability and a lot of time in financial institutions. And you talk about the camaraderie there, and you have a reverence for it. Do you see that in the same part in other parts of the industry? Do you see that, for instance, in the property or the casualty space, or is it not quite the same, you don't think?
Well, I have to say I'm not really qualified per se, but I'll tell you my perception because I'm not in the casualty or property.
Yeah, sure.
But one thing I tell young people when they're thinking about getting into insurance, and I think I've recruited somewhere between 12 and 15 people into professional lines, including children of friends of mine who are in the industry now. And one thing I tell them that I think is unique about professional lines, we don't check how many square feet are in the warehouse or how many fire extinguishers there are or, all those ratables for what we do is we talk to people, and depending on the bigger accounts, you meet with the board of directors or the CFO or the general counsel, because we're ensuring the acts of individuals, of people. And so we're interacting with them in the underwriting process and the claims process. And so in my view, and I don't know, there's no scientific background, but I don't know if this is true or not, but I think the people who gravitate towards professional lines are more outgoing and more people-oriented because they're not just sitting at their desk calculating fire extinguisher, space.
Yeah.
They're actually talking to people and interacting. That's what I think is a great thing about professional lines.
Do you think that the underwriting, because it's so people-based, has it stayed the same, or are there things that are being done now with respects underwriting or broking that are better than they were before?
Yeah, that's also a very good question. Obviously, AI is affecting things, right? So I think, and I haven't underwritten in a long time, but I think AI is probably changing the landscape quite a bit. Back in the old days, there was a lot of personal interaction, especially on the big accounts when you work on the big account. And one of my bosses used to say, it's harder to hang up the phone on somebody and say "F you" if you haven't, if you met them, if you've met them.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
didn't have personal interaction, oh, screw you, we're not quoting it. But if you actually had lunch with a guy or something, you're like, I can't hang up on the guy. And so that was very important in the industry. And it still is, I think, to an extent. But unfortunately, I think also with AI and, we did a Google search and we don't need to meet with them now because we know what they did. So things are changing, but I don't want to be one of those guys that says everything's getting worse. Get off my lawn, kids. I don't necessarily believe that. It's just different.
Yeah. Yeah. How about in terms of the people? How about in terms of the training? You had so much more. I mean, in a lot of your experiences, people are in a couple of blocks radius, and
Yeah.
and now it's so much more spread out. You have remote work, etc. Is it different or is it not as good?
You know, it's interesting because there are still like, the Plus Conference or WSIA and things like that where people get together, even though you're right, it's more spread out. In the early days when I was in the 90s at AIG, we wouldn't hire an underwriter who lived in Peoria, because you got to be in
Right.
the office. And nowadays
Right.
with all the video conferencing and the work from home, it is a different mindset. And you don't have the close-knit camaraderie quite as much as you used to, I think, because of the
Yeah.
disparate. But there's still a basic element of, we get our team together twice a year, we have meetings, and I think there's still a lot of camaraderie. And by the way, my latest book, Laughs and Lessons, which I published earlier this year, the intent of me writing that, which is like my best book stories from 35-year career, is trying to lure younger people in because I think
Right.
we have a bad industry image, right? If you ask a college kid, would you like to work in insurance? Oh, what? Be Jay from State Farm and a Cube? No, they have no idea that we play golf, we go to resorts, we have, So I wrote the book to try and show the sexier side of the industry and the fun side, because we are having a dearth of young talent. We need to fill the gap. So that's my thought: is if they knew how fun it was, we'd get more people applying.
I've definitely been asked about other people's car insurance and if they can improve on it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
What are some of what have been some of your career highlights?
Well, actually,
Yeah, go ahead.
well, that's a great question too. But I do want to tell you one story from Laughs and Lessons that,
Yeah.
and it's currently available on Amazon. It's got 21 5-star reviews. So, and all the money goes to charity
I'll
to
send it around on the
fund.
thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, but one of the valuable stories there, some of them are funny. This one's not funny, but it's very valuable, I think. In the early 90s or mid 90s, when I was at AIG, we owned Morfar golf course.
Yeah.
It was a very prestigious course. Everybody wanted to play it all the time. So each division got 4 tee times for the season, and that was it because we had a lot of divisions in New York. And when you got your 4 tee times, you could call a broker and say, "Hey, I got a tee time next Wednesday. Oh, I'm canceling my meetings. I'll be there. Don't worry."
Yeah.
So the guy who ran it, Al Silverstein, rest in peace, great guy. He had an assistant, Lois, who maintained a cancellation list because, like everything else at AIG in the old days, it was a profit center. So if Morfar couldn't have a foursome filled, they couldn't charge back a division and it would be hurt their bottom line. So they wanted every foursome filled, and there wasn't that many foursomes. So she had the cancellation list. One day she calls me and says, "Larry, we have a cancellation tomorrow. Would you like to take it?" And as soon as she asked anybody, everybody's like, "I'll take it." You don't even think about it because you'll find people want to play. So that summer, it was actually a little later. It was summer of 2000. My group, the FI group in New York, we got 22 tee times at Morfar. Everybody else had 3 or 4. It got to the point where it's almost embarrassing to be like in the lobby of the building. So, "You're playing Morfar again? How the heck?" So there was a secret to that, right?
Yeah.
And I never told anybody until I wrote the book here. But it's a very simple thing, but unfortunately, it's something a lot of people overlook. So what happened was when we played that first cancellation date, I came back to the office next day. I went down to the Duane Reade drugstore down the street and I bought a 1-pound bag of M&Ms and I inter-officed it to Lois. I said, "Lois, thanks very much for the tea time, blah, blah, blah." She called me like 3 days later. "Larry, would you like cancellation?" I said, "Lois, I thought I'd be back at the bottom list." "No, you're nice. Nobody else ever gives me anything. I'm putting you at the top. You're getting the first call all the time." So every single time I would send her another 1-pound bag.
I bet.
we got 22 tee times, and no one else could figure out what's the secret. How do those guys get so many? But the lesson is just be nice to everybody, especially assistants. It's ridiculous to be like rude and arrogant, and it always pays dividends. And you never know where that person's going to be in 5 years or whatever. They'll remember who treated them nicely, including waiters at restaurants and all those kinds of things.
So when you're at AIG and just doing an internal golf outing, do you still go to the restaurant? Do you still have the lunch? And
Oh yeah,
yeah,
yeah. The more far when you make the turn, you have
yeah,
lunch
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And they charge our division back, but we didn't care because
Right.
we're getting to entertain brokers, and they all loved Morfar. So it was a
Amazing.
win-win, I think, for every my perspective anyway.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But yeah, talk about some of the other highlights that you've had, not just in whether it was underwriting or broking, but stuff that's come out of this book or the books that
Yeah.
it seems like you've had so many interactions with different people and kind of a lot of acclaim.
Well, and I don't think I'm any different than any other person who's been in the industry that long. I mean, you're just gonna meet people and go to
Yeah.
meetings and have exposure to people like, for example, well, this one might not be exactly appropriate, but your boss, Warren Buffett, who I've never met in person, but when I wrote my first book, I sent it to him, and he gave me a very nice note,
Yeah.
and he let us use his accolades for the advertising, and the second book as well. Now, all the money goes to charity. I know he's very philanthropic, but he's a very down to earth, good guy. And there's a lot of demands on his time. For him to have read 2 of my books and give me notes on them was awesome. But there's a lot of people like that in the industry that, when you're in professional lines, as I said, I once met with the board of directors of Apple long ago,
Yeah.
as founder of Capital One, some big name people. And it's I think, an interesting aspect of insuring people's acts being in professional lines, because you get to meet movers and shakers. You get to hear about their business, what their strategies are. I think it's very fascinating. And that's why the latest book was my attempt to give back to the industry, to try and get some more younger people in so they can enjoy and perpetuate all this.
I mean, when you look at the industry now, like what's one thing that you're surprised by?
It is interesting. One thing that surprised me. So I have my own consulting firm. I
Yeah.
do a lot of expert witness work. I've done it since 2010, but I also get a fair number of calls, probably 2 or 3 a month, believe it or not. Larry, we have a private equity firm that wants to get into professional lines. They want to back an MGA. They want to talk to
Right.
somebody, and there's so much money pouring in still to professional lines. One of the reasons, and practitioners know this, but laymen might not, is because we're a long tail line of business, right? You collect the D&O premium today, you may not pay out the claim for 3, 4, 5 years. And so it's lucrative, as opposed to, say, auto. You have an accident, you got to pay out within a month when they get the fender fixed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of money still pouring in, and some of it is what I will call naive money, and this as well, where they're saying, "Oh, we're going to back this MGA. This guy's got 3 years experience, and he's running an MGA, and we're going to." And it's surprising to me how attractive, and a lot of times these people come in during the hard market because they think, "Oh, our capacity is really needed," but that's not when you build relationships. You got to start at the soft market and build it up. Having said all that, you all know plenty of people who've made quite a bit of money selling their MGAs. So there is, something to that model of starting an MGA and selling it off eventually.
You think it's going to keep going on though? I mean, I know everyone keeps predicting that it's going to slow down, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either, because on the one hand, you say common sense, it can't, but it is, and people are succeeding. But, anytime there's a new MJ, I have a friend who says, we don't need another D&O market. What's that, the 90th D&O market? Who do they think they are? You really do need some kind of special edge if you're just going to hang out your shingle and say, we're market number 90 on private company D&O. Unless you are owned by a broker or have some connection somewhere, it's going to be hard to really get a traction. And I know this because I was actually president of an MGA that failed after a year and a half. We were woefully underfunded, but we didn't know that at the time. And now in the hindsight, I'm a great guy to give advice because I made all the mistakes. So I know what not to do.
Yeah. What were some of the mistakes?
Well, the first mistake was we didn't have enough money to start. Some of these MGAs you see today, 20 million, 30 million. We had less than 2 million to start, and we were paying salaries out of the box. Second, we didn't have the right relationships. I say to people now, give a broker a percentage of ownership or somehow align yourself with a broker, pay them higher. You have to have some kind of in because the brokers, I was at Amwins for a year from 23 to 24. And, I was just basically a claims advocate and I did a few other things, but I was getting inundated. Larry, you want to go to lunch? Larry, you want to go to dinner? Blah, blah, blah. Any kind of broker like that is in high demand. Everybody wants to have a piece of them. And so you need some kind of differentiator so that the Amwins guy or the RT special guy picks up your phone call. Otherwise, forget it. You're just another one in a sea of competitors.
Yeah. 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 What, so you've been doing expert witness stuff. What else have you been?
Let me ask a question for you because you just raised a great point, Adam. I can read your mind. So I've been an expert in over 300 cases since 2010, and I've seen a lot of the problems that arise. And one thing that I came up with a solution. So at least 30 of those 300 plus cases involved warranty issues, right? Where the carrier's saying, oh, you knew about this, you knew about that. So I have a solution. If anybody's listening this far into the video, I think this is a very valuable suggestion for carriers and brokers too, if they can get the carrier to do it. So it gives rise to a lot of problems because it's hard to prove. Well, did the CEO know that he was going to get sued when he signed the application with the warranty? Now, a lot of times the people who signed what they say is a false warranty will say, well, I'm not a lawyer. Yeah, the guy told me he was going to sue, but I thought he was kidding. How would I know? It's a very hard thing for a carrier to prove. So my position is we should come up with what I call the objective warranty, not the subjective. Because when you think about it, a subjective warranty, which most of the industry uses right now, you're saying to the applicant, we want you to look around and become a professional claims person and tell us what might give rise to a claim. We're asking you to be an insurance expert at this point. And most people are not, obviously. You're running a computer company. How do you know what's going to give rise to a capital C claim? Not only has to be a lawsuit, it has to be covered under the policy. So my solution or suggested solution, an objective warranty, is you no longer ask, what do you think? What's your impression? What might give rise or is reasonably likely to give rise? You say, right now, are you subject to a demand letter? Has anybody filed an arbitration against you? Things that are tangible. And that way it would be hard for the CEO to say, oh, I didn't know we were in an arbitration. Of course you knew, right? So I think that helps both sides for clarity purposes. And it'll probably cut down on a lot of these lawsuits, even though it's self-serving against me. But I think it'll be good for the industry because you know how it is. Some people, especially big companies, say, oh, buying the policy just gives me a right to sue the carrier. That's not good imagery for the industry. You don't want that. We want it as smoothly operating as possible.
Interesting.
By the way, Adam, I think we're getting a little too serious here, so I'm going to put my glasses on now so I can see you a little better.
Very good.
This could be the screenshot when you advertise.
Maybe not.
That might get edited out. So
no, I'm messing around, but I got to say, so I keep going back to, you did this, and I know I brought it up before we went on live on this. You sent out this April Fool's memo and I'm so upset that I didn't think of it. And just describe to everyone what you did, because I thought it was really funny.
Well, first of all, thank you for that compliment. I've had a few people say, I wish I wrote this or did that. So I always take that as a big compliment. So I love April Fool's jokes. So a number of times, including April 1st, 2004, I was at ACE in New York, now Chubb, obviously. But so I wanted to play an April Fool's joke on the underwriters. And I don't know how I came up with the idea, but everybody's grumbling, oh, I got to fly to Boston. I got to do this. I said, well, I'm thinking in my mind, what if you had to take Greyhound, right? So I came up with this memo. I made it look like it was coming from the ACE travel department. And I had my assistant send it out because if it came out from me, people would be suspicious. But she sent it out to about 60 underwriters or so. And it basically said, if you have a business trip under 500 miles, from now on, you have to take Greyhound. We're saving. Because anytime there's a memo about cost cutting, everybody believes it, right? Because every company is always cutting costs, right? So But we've worked out some beneficial things. If you sit in the first front row, 4 rows, it's reserved for ACE, and you get to choose the FM radio station of your choice. And then I made up this whole thing about, because it was Greyhound buses, the Top Dog Lounge, which we have in cities that have an NHL franchise, will have a Top Dog, which I totally made up. And you can conduct your meeting there with clients because you don't want to have to go out of the bus terminal because you're going to have to get back on the bus for a long ride. So, and I had it coming from a director of transportation, Vladimir Cramden. So the Cramden part was a tip of the hat to Ralph Cramden, Jackie Gleason, the Honeymooners bus driver. And so as soon as she sent it out, people started calling her. Helena, I'm not taking a bus to Cleveland. This is crazy. I already have plane tickets. I can't get a refund. You know, people were really up in arms. It really hit home. And a lot of it was just because it was cost cutting. Everybody believes in cost cutting. So, but that was one of my more enjoyable ones that really hit people. And then I had another one. I don't know if you read about when I was at PIA, Houston Casualty in Mount Kisco. On April 1st, I had our HR director saying we're operating a new HVAC system for the next 4 months. It's going to be very hot in here. So she sent that out. We have to keep the doors and windows closed for laboratory conditions while we fix the Canuter valve. I made up all these terms. So she sends it out, and little did I know 2 things. One, they actually did have an HVAC issue the year before, which I didn't know, and everybody was still on edge. And 2, I walked into a senior underwriter who was an older guy, his office, and he goes, Larry, did you see this memo? I'm going to have a heart attack. I can't be. And he almost had a heart attack right there. I said, oh, it's a joke. It's a joke. So you do sort of have to be careful you don't kill anybody when you're doing these.
Oh, my God. So, hey, one of the last questions I was going to ask was kind of predictions on future of the industry, as kind of its, I guess I'd say historian. But when you look at what's next or in the future, what are some of the things that you think about?
It's a great question. So I don't think it's going away. I think people are, especially on the D&O side, but also E&O, people need the insurance so they can sleep at night, right? So the landscape will change, I would bet, with respect to both underwriting and claims handling. I think AI is going to become more prevalent, and a lot of underwriting submissions at some point, especially for the small sort of program business, it might be almost 100% AI where everything runs. We're not there yet, but it seems like we're heading that way, which is unfortunate because to my mind, on the larger accounts, especially, it's still relationship business, right? If you write $1 million premium check to a company, you want to know the people there. You want to say, hey, I can call Adam. He's an upstanding guy. He'll take care of me. You don't want to just say, oh, some AI robot wrote my premium here, my quote, and I have nobody to talk to. So I do think it will change, but not for the next 5 to 10 years. I think we'll still have the basic products. And they say auto insurance will go away to an extent because humans won't be able to drive. So there'll be no accidents, except when there is, it'll be a products liability issue. So all these Waymos, et cetera, are going to have to buy products insurance. So some of it will just shift, but there will be changes, I'm sure. I just hope we don't lose the camaraderie, and we still have a lot of good people in the industry, and to me that makes it special.
I totally agree with you. I mean, I think certainly the technology will continue to get better, but you still want to know there's a person on the other side, because inevitably the technology, something doesn't work, or you have a question about how something is presented. A lot of times these things it's a complex contract, and if you're starting to move the people away, I think you're going to end up having different problems, at least on a lot of the insurance pieces, liability, the professional liability. I think so.
Yeah. I don't think we'll remove people from the equation, and relationships are still important.
Yeah. Well, hey, this has been a lot of fun. I'm really glad that you joined. I hope everyone's having a good summer, and but yeah, really appreciate the time. Thanks a lot.